Over. Okay, it's 3:35. Now call to order the meeting of the Washoe County School District Other Post-Employment Benefits Committee. Don, would you take roll, please?
Jeff Hurst.
Present.
Mary Lamont.
Present.
Fran McGregor.
Present.
Mark Mather.
Present. Okay, everyone's accounted for. Very good. Okay. We now turn to section 2 of the agenda. We will now be taking public comment after each action item and then at the end of the meeting, but not at the beginning. So for those of you in the audience, you're gonna have to wait. All right, agenda item 2.01 is approval of the minutes for the committee meeting on November 27, 2023. Were there any changes, corrections, questions to the minutes? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes then? Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. Do I have any public comment on the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion then to approve the minutes of November 27th?
And McGregor, I move that we approve the minutes from the September 20th meeting, or from the last meeting, November.
Yep. Okay. Do I have a second?
Mary Lamont, I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Okay, hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Next, we turn to a discussion of our unaudited second quarter financial statements. This is for discussion only, and presenting our financial statements is our controller, Marty Williams. Thank you, Marty. And he'll walk us through the 3 pages you should have now in your packet.
Okay, so Martin Williams for the record, controller of Washoe County School District. The first page is the assets, and as you see, we are moving along nicely. Our cash has continued to increase. The financial statements, we are getting a large increase from our investments thanks to the increased interest rates. And other than that, everything is pretty much the same as last year. Do we have any questions?
I think so.
Jeff Hurst. Cash is down.
Cash is up by almost over $10 million.
The cash
Oh,
is 3,000,008, and then
Okay.
it's down.
yes, that's
So what happened? The monies went into investments?
the monies that was transferred out last year brought the cash balance down, and it's constantly being replenished by the employer participation, but is not recouped from where it was last year.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've seen total assets go from 77 million to more than 87 million, almost 88. So that's a darn good year's, $11 million increase. So, okay, seeing no other questions, thank you, Marty, appreciate it. Again, that was for discussion only. Our next item is an action item. This is the annual request of the district to authorize the transfer of funds from the trust fund to reimburse the district for other post-employment benefits. This is, there is a definite format required by the Nevada Administrative Code for such requests. This is the item that is a memo from our board president, Beth Smith, requesting this transfer. As per Nevada Administrative Code, we're also provided as a copy of the OPEB budget, and then the minutes of the September 12th, 2023 board meeting in which this item requesting this transfer was presented to our board and was approved. So, again, the action here is to authorize withdrawal, basically, of monies from the trust fund as these costs are incurred. And you can see here, the costs include subsidy payments for eligible retirees totaling approximately $3.2 million. Then we also, of course, provide other retiree medical subsidies for folks not in PEB, and the total cost for the fiscal year is $2.4 million. And then there's life insurance subsidies of $1.15 million. All of those monies are budgeted in the OPEB budget, so we're staying within budget. But again, this is kind of pre-authorization to withdraw funds out of the trust fund, because it is a trust fund, and needs your approval to do so for reimbursement to our health insurance fund. Any questions on that?
Jeff Kirst, one question, please. The $3,242,000 goes to Nevada Post-Employment Benefits Program. Is that school teachers?
Those are mostly certified, but I believe they include other employees of the district. But yes, that's the district's
It's
share.
our district people.
That is just the school district employees, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. You used to be able to participate in PEB, and now you can't. But for those who did, there's this subsidy that the district provides. Yeah. Okay, do I have any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request of the transfer of these funds not to exceed $6,789,218.
Jeff Kirst, I make a motion to approve the transfer of the $6 million plus funds from our trust to the entity that will handle these benefits.
Fran McGregor, I second.
Very good. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. No? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Very good. Agenda item 2.04 is a review of the performance of the Retirement Benefits Investment Fund. Unfortunately, we just have the report for September 30th, 2023. We don't have the December 31, 2023 report. Again, just an informational item. We, unfortunately, at this point, had a negative quarter of -3%. But as you saw in the financial statements Marty presented, we've certainly seen a rebound since. But you know, for the last year, again, a very healthy return of 16.2%, and over the long term, you know, still a very positive return for the fund. So, you know, if there are any questions, happy to try to answer them. This is our normal quarterly review of the performance of the RBIF fund that we're in. Okay, hearing no questions, then we'll move on to the last agenda item before the last public comment period. And this is for discussion and possible action, and this is a continuation of discussion we had last meeting, a long extended discussion, good discussion about our OPEB costs and investment strategies. And so I'll maybe can go over this one more time and refresh folks' memories, and then we can have that discussion. So what you should see is the table, you know, spreadsheet-looking table that breaks down the different components of our OPEB costs over time. So again, we contract with an actuary to determine our OPEB liability every year. And what's nice is about the actuary we use, we ask them to not only break out the different types of costs that he has to calculate as a liability, but also to project them for the next 50 years. And the reason why we wanted to do that, again, is to, as our funds build over time, is evaluate kind of where we stand in terms of the assets we hold versus the liabilities these assets will fund over time. And so let me go through those columns again for you, because I know this is complicated, dry, complex, whatever. The columns medical subsidy and PEB payments are what I would call and what the actuary would call hard costs. Those are actual cash outflows that the district has to pay other entities. And so we just went over 2 of those in the request for a transfer. The third column are the estimated projected PEB payments, PEB subsidies that we pay to the state for eligible retirees who get a PEB subsidy. And then the second column is the medical subsidy. Again, we provide a subsidy for medical premiums for the retiree only, for those not in PEB, for eligible employees who retired, I think it was prior to 2005. And so, again, those are actual cash outflows. Those are payments that we wire out every month to the state PEB or to other medical providers. And so you can see there, we start in kind of both cases with a projected cost of 2.8 million, and then it declines every year from there, even with medical inflation accounted for. It's declining virtually every year, not every year, but virtually every year. So we go from $2.8 million for each category of expense in this current fiscal year down to a total of less than 12,000 in 2072. And you can guess the reason why. We talked about it last time. These are, again, we're in a closed system where we already know who's eligible for OPEB benefits, and there's no new employee can come in to the system and receive OPEB benefits. And so as people unfortunately pass away, our obligation, our liability ceases. So that's pretty straightforward, right? Those are costs we have to fund. If there wasn't an OPEB trust, the district would just have to cover those costs out of its health insurance fund and charge active employees more than anyone else for those costs. And those costs total 116 million in projected costs. Then this next set of costs are liabilities that per GASB and per generally accepted accounting principles require the actuary to cost out, but they're not actually hard costs that are cash outflows out of the system. And Mr. Kirst had questions about this, and I talked to the actuary this week, again, to kind of confirm my understanding. And those are actually almost his exact words. Like, I have to calculate these costs, but, and from an accounting and actuarial standpoint, they are a cost, but they're not an expenditure you're going to have out of a budget, if that makes any sense at all. And so the life insurance cost you see is again what they call the implicit rate subsidy. And what that means again is, and this applies to the next column too, if I would, an active employee, the cost to procure a life insurance policy is going to be a lot less. If you're a 25-year-old, to get a life insurance policy is going to cost a lot less than if you're 55 or 75 or 85. But Nevada law doesn't allow us to establish separate rates for active employees versus retiree employees. Nevada statutes require us to calculate a blended rate and a one-size-fits-all rate that both active and retired employees pay. It's the same rate. So the implicit rate subsidy is the difference between what retirees actually pay for that life insurance policy versus what they would pay if we didn't have a blended rate. But we're collecting the blended rate from everybody. So we're collecting enough monies in premiums to cover that cost. So that's why we say this is an actuarial cost, right? In the sense of, okay, right, there's a benefit that retirees are receiving by virtue of the blended rate, and that's the implicit rate subsidy that you see here. And so now this isn't a closed system, right? If you retire today, you can buy life insurance through the district. So this is an open system, and that's in part why you see costs increase over time, because we have more and more retirees every year, right? And so not only does the cost of the actual life insurance increase, and the actuary has a assumed rate of inflation there, but the number of people buying life insurance policies increases over time, is the assumption. But again, we collect enough money by virtue of the blended rate to cover our costs. So that's not an expenditure that we have to budget for out of the system. Now, we choose to reimburse the health insurance fund in some years for that implicit rate subsidy, but we wouldn't have to. It helps keep rates down, but there's no requirement for us to cover that. The next column over is not well titled, and I think that's probably the genesis of Mr. Kerr's question. It's not very clear what the heck this is. And Mr. Kerr, did you get my email?
Yes, I
Okay.
did, and I read it and understood
Okay.
perhaps every other word.
Okay. So, again, if you're a retiree, you can pay, right? You can still be on the district's medical plan, and you're gonna pay a premium, right? But again, there's an implicit rate subsidy, right? In that you're getting a blended rate for that health insurance policy versus what probably you would have to pay in the market because of your age. And so this includes the implicit rate subsidy, and that's most of this cost here as well. And again, that's why you see, at least for some time, a rise in costs every year. There's also an allocation of our administrative costs in that category. So we buy stop-loss insurance to protect ourselves against large claims, and there's an allocation of that here included in this column too. But in his own words, it was kind of like, I have to calculate this, but it's kind of silly, but I have to. So when you see actuarial reports and we talk about our funded ratio, it's our total assets over our total liabilities. It includes all of these costs. And that, again, that GASB is very clear, you need to do that. And so we do. But I guess the whole point of this not the whole point, but a primary point to this analysis is, yeah, but I only have to pay out the 116 million. Right? I'm not going to pay out 378 million. And so we go back to that column, medical claims. Those are claims. But again, we're a self-insured plan. We're going to set rates to collect enough money to pay claims. I'm not relying upon OPEB withdrawals to cover that. So we set the blended rates, and the board approves those rates every year. But I'm collecting enough rate revenue, to pay all of my medical claims, right? So this, again, mostly is the implicit rate subsidy, which is an actuarial concept really only. So if I exclude those actuarial costs and only consider hard costs, those are only 116 million. And last fiscal year, total assets were 88 million. That might be approaching 100 million by the end of this fiscal year, right? Unless the market tanks in the next 4 months. So the conversation we had last year, or last meeting, was, gosh, we're starting to get really close to having as much money as we need to pay out hard costs. we're almost fully funded if you consider just hard costs. And so then the conversation that I raised, the question I raised was, well, once you are fully funded, do you want to have exposure to the stock market, right? Because right? It's more volatile. We've seen this long run up, this long bull market in the stock market. What happens when there's a bear market and you lose 20% or 30%? Do you want to be exposed to that risk or not? Or at a certain point, as we get closer to being fully funded, do you want to take your chips off the table and say, you know what, I'm fully funded, and I don't need an equity-like return, or I don't need the stock market return of close to 10% because I'm now fully funded. And so that was the question I raised, and I just feel like it's important to ask because I've managed portfolios of stocks before and seen people really are happy when the stock market's going up, but then when it crashes, they're like, right, it's kind of soul crushing, right? Like, wow, now I lost half my money and it took another 10 years to recover. And so the question is, at some point, does this trust committee want to start paring back exposure to equities and change its asset allocation and have more in fixed income? And at the time we were talking, fixed income rates were, longer term rates were close to 5%. Somewhat equity-like, right? That's not bad. So you could get close to what the assumed equity return is and yet be in a safe investment. Now rates have fallen since, but that's the question that really this topic covers is, how do we want to be invested as we approach being fully funded against hard costs? Do we want to de-risk the portfolio? Maybe not totally, but not have the asset allocation RBIF has. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, and if we go to that RBIF report, they have exposure to they have a 28% exposure to the bond market. Sorry, that was the performance report. So if you look at the target allocation, there's a 28% exposure to the US bond market. And that's actually not really the total entire bond market. Those are really only treasuries. So it's an incredibly conservative strategy. So the question is, gosh, do we want to have a 50-50 portfolio, or 60% fixed income, 40% stocks, or 80% bonds, 20% stocks? Again, as we get closer to being fully funded. So I know this is pretty technical, right? But I feel like we need to ask this question periodically, especially as we get closer to coming up to this $116 million of liabilities. And this isn't present value down, by the way. So anyhow, hopefully I teed that question up okay. And now I look to you for any comments and questions.
Jeff Kirst, a couple of questions. On our sheet that we have here for December 31st, 2023 and 2022,
Yes, sir.
it lists interest income and dividend income. 400,000 of interest income and 498,000, roughly 500,000 in dividend income. I would figure that's 6 months.
Uh-huh.
So with the monies that the trust has, the dividend income is coming from whatever their stock mix is.
Yep.
And then the 500,000 would be $1 million for the year approximately. And then the trust is 30%, let's say 30% of, because we just took $6 million out.
Well, you authorized that. We may not spend
We'll
all
go out.
$6 million, but yeah.
And then you put $2 million back in and some of the.
Yeah.
Anyway, if we're 30% of 80, that's, what, $24 million?
Mm-hmm.
So we get 1 million from $24 million, which is about right, right?
Yeah, 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 that's right.
And if we don't have any talk about the dividends for the other portion of the, where those are coming from,
Well, as you said, those are from stocks.
the stocks that the master investor has here.
Yes.
So theoretically, we could, some of the stocks that are in the index don't pay much in the way of dividends.
Right.
A lot of them are the tech, which I think is something like 7% of the,
Yeah, total market
seven
cap.
stocks are,
Yeah, yeah,
they
huge.
are
yeah.
huge, and they don't pay
Yeah.
anywhere
Yeah.
near 5% dividends.
Right.
So I would say, as trustees, we should meditate on that aspect of it. I mean, stocks are gonna go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that have paid dividends for 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you just go in bonds, you run the same risk with a risk of principal.
Not if you don't sell. If you hold to maturity.
Hold to maturity, we
and
get our 4%
right,
for 30 years.
That's right. You clip that 4% or 5% coupon for the next 30 years. And you might see an unrealized, i.e. paper gain or loss,
Sure,
right? Depending on
but
the.
we won't worry.
But you wouldn't worry if you held them to maturity. And that's, so that's the option we have is we can legally hire an investment manager to manage the fixed income portfolio today. And what we would most likely ask that manager to do would be to ladder out and match off against outflows to buy, a bond that matures, the total's 2.5 million in 2044. So it kind of, right, you're matching the disbursement in 2044, right, as an example.
Sure.
And you're just going to hold that to maturity. You're not, right, you're not necessarily asking for active management there. I mean, they could, but, right, you're just
risk.
locking in a coupon
Right.
payment and a yield, and you'll never sell before maturity unless you want, unless you can for gain and you think you can, kind of outperform the market. So that's the question is, again, as you get closer to your assets equaling your, what I call hard liabilities, there's that option where you just match off, don't worry about what the market's gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just buy a 2044 bond, you buy a 2045 bond, right? And you just kind of operate that way.
Well, and then looking at our list, the people cannot join if they have retired after 2006, other than for the life insurance.
Right. Which,
So if most of the people retired at 60,
right.
they're,
Yeah,
it's kind of a stretch that there are gonna be a lot of them left when we get out this far, other than for the life insurance. And then the life insurance is the blended rate,
yeah, and that includes, life insurance includes new employees.
yes. And
But yeah, on the medical subsidy and the PEB payments, there can be no new employees. So you're right, I mean, it's a stretch.
And the school district does not have to pay the life insurance. It could end that program.
Yeah, that's true. It could, actually, you're right.
Okay.
It is not a legal obligation, unlike
The other,
The-
the medical,
the medical, where the district is legally obligated, can't even get out of it if it could declare bankruptcy. It is legally obligated to pay those costs because that was a contract right of those employees when they started working.
when they started running. So the law that covers that is the fact that they had a negotiated agreement.
Yes, those were the benefits offered to that employee upon their hire date. And so it's the same as your pension. And that's been litigated nationally quite a few times over cities that have declared bankruptcy. They want to get out of their pension obligation, and courts have pretty consistently ruled you can't get out of that. That's a contract right of those employees. When they came to you and started working, you told them you're getting a pension. And so it's the same way here. There were these benefits, these other post-employment benefits that they were told they have. And now the district and employees associations negotiated an end to the program. But for those that got in it, before the drawbridge was raised, it is a contract right.
And it was put, you showed me where it was in the contract,
Mm-hmm.
the negotiated agreement.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
So that's the law. What about the medical subsidy? Does that go to the families or just to the
Just the-
employee?
just the employee.
Teacher or the custodial,
Just the-
building managers and other people?
Right, just the employee. There are, none of our health insurance plans cover any dependent coverage. So if you want to cover a dependent, you're paying the full
You pay.
freight.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's full freight that they pay
For dependents,
for dependents.
yes.
Well, I would say we just continue to meditate on this and get some more numbers as far as the mix of the assets in the program. Because the school district can cancel the life insurance if necessary.
And again, it's not a hard cost. That's the life insurance cost you see is the implicit rate subsidy.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's an actuarial concept that says you as a retiree are getting that benefit. You're paying whatever, $50 a month, when in the market you should be paying $100 a month. So that difference is a benefit that they have to calculate, quantify, and report on as an OPEB liability. But again, the active employee, on the other hand, would only have to say for that same $50 a month policy, their cost might only be $25. So we're over collecting from actives and we're under collecting from retirees, right? When you look at what they would actually pay in an open market kind of situation. So we're collecting enough because active employees are essentially subsidizing retired employees for the cost of life insurance. But overall, we're setting that rate to equal what we need to collect.
Well, I can tell you, as I retired, you have to go down the list of the different things that you can, or maybe are eligible for. So for me, they said, is they cut the amount of life insurance in half when you hit 70, which is good. So then they told me life insurance for me would cost $8 a month for $20,000.
Yeah,
That's quite a subsidy.
yeah.
So
So I guess, Mr. Kurz, I guess I would ask, what other information do you want to see? Because I want to be able to get you the information you need, but
I would like to know why the dividends are so low for 3/4 of the portfolio being invested, where those are coming from.
So I'll tell you that when going back to the RBIF report, when it says U.S. stocks, that is a passive index replicating the S&P 500. So I can give you the list of stocks comprising the S&P 500, but you probably have that or know that.
I do have it.
So it's a passive mutual fund, essentially. And there's no active management or decisions about, okay, I'm going to increase my allocation to Apple or Google or whatever. It's just whatever their share of the total S&P market cap is, that's how much that mutual fund holds, right? So, it is what it is, I guess is what I'm trying to say is, right? That's the dividend income for the first half of the year. It's not like you can direct RBIF, just being in RBIF, to say, I want you to allocate more to dividend earning stocks. They're not, because it's just
they
a
do it their
passive,
way.
it's a passive S&P 500 index. It is what it is.
Well, but given our situation where we have a limited number of people who will not be with us forever, and we need to have certain income to make this work out if we decide that we're going to, if we buy all bonds, we run the interest rate risk and we run some risk, but there are index funds that are dividend,
Yeah, but we can't be, so that's, we're getting to the heart of the question. The law allows us to be in RBIF, or it allows us, with some constraints, to independently hire an asset manager to pursue whatever strategy we want. But you can't have it both ways. You're either in RBIF and you have no say in the types of investments they hold, or you can hire an outside manager to tailor investments to your liking. And that's the question really I'm somewhat asking is, the only way to adjust our asset allocations, to say we wanted to de-risk the portfolio, again, as we get closer to being fully funded, the only way to do that is to hire an outside investment manager.
well, our expenses are what, $19,000, which is for the audits or something like that, and it would be very costly to have
Well,
some investment manager.
The cost of the mutual funds are netted off, right?
Yeah.
You have an expense ratio, so you're gonna get the net return. And that would be the case with an outside investment manager too. And I'm not, so, again, if you're an RBIF, you're stuck with their asset allocation and the mutual fund essentially that they hold. So, like I say, in the US bond market, they're only buying treasuries. Well, that, I mean, that's, sure, that's the least risky of bond investments, but that's not what the district's invested in term, and we're confined to 100% fixed income. I mean, you're gonna get the lowest yield of anything out there available. So what I'm saying is you can't rate, you're either an RBIF, I guess you could be in both RBIF and have your own outside manager. You could have a blended approach, but there's no way for you to change how those monies are invested. We're a passive investor.
Without taking a portion of it for something else.
Correct.
And then as trustees, we would have to make the decision to do something like that if we wanted to, given what we have discussed with the closed loop on everything other than the life insurance.
Right.
And this is something that we really do have to consider and think about thoroughly as trustees.
Right.
I mean, we can't just say, RBIF, go, go, go. It's been great for years. We have to actually think about it and make decisions.
Yeah, and I know this is technical. I mean, I get it, but again, I feel obligated to bring this issue up because, again, I've worked for trusts and other things where, right, things were humming along, and then, right, it's the .com crash or whatever, and right, it literally took 10 years to recover your money, and that's painful. And so when things get frothy, right, and, again, you have this extended bull market, right, there is that question of, well, could things reverse? And again, if you're fully funded, do you want to have that risk? It'd be like, let me give you an analogy. I don't know if any of you have college savings accounts for your grandchildren or children. So, okay, so I do. So, right, so if I know the total cost of sending my kid to college is $50,000, well, when they're young and I've only got $10,000 in the account, I can afford to take on that risk, right? I'm so far away from where I need to be. I got such a long investment horizon, right? I can take on risky investments. It's worth it. But if I finally got to a point where I had $50,000 in that college savings account and I knew the tuition cost for $50,000, then I probably wouldn't want to risk any of it, right? I've collected in as much as I need to pay that college tuition. So why would I risk losing 20, 30, 40%. That's the situation we're approaching when you look at these hard costs of, we're almost getting to the point of having them totally covered. And if you probably present value this down, we're really close to having it totally covered. So now the question is, do you want to continue to have the risk of losing 20, 30, 40% of the market value? So instead of having 100 million, right, in holdings, you might have 60 million. And I've been there, and so I don't want you to look at me like, Mark, why didn't you ask us this question
Yeah.
in 2024? Because we could have done something about it. That's the question, and I know it's very difficult to kind of make these investment decisions, but that's part of our responsibility on this committee. It's preserving these OPEB assets. And I'm pretty conservative, so I always do worry about the stock market and when it's going to take a turn for the worse, right? And we keep pushing off the next recession, right? We're supposed to have a recession in 2022, then 2023, right? No one talks about recession too much anymore, which maybe means it's coming. I don't know. But, right, we keep pushing off a recession, and then that makes me worried, right? It's kind of like a balloon that keeps getting bigger. Once it gets pierced, the bubble bursting is bigger than if it was just a little balloon. So the more we push off a recession, I worry that the bigger the recession will be, just like the Great Recession. So that's why I'm bringing this up.
Well, on the safety side, if there is a recession, if the stock market went down, and if this did not work so well, we have the out of the school district because they are legally obligated
You do
to
have that
make
out.
up the
Thanks.
Difference.
Thanks, said the
But
CFO
then the
of the
school district has problems too. With
Yes.
budgets, they just gave a great big raise to all of the school teachers. And there will be other people knocking on the door to get that money. And if it winds up like UPS, where they gave everybody a big raise, then they had to fire 12,000 people to pay for it.
They did give good raises. Those are extraordinary raises.
But you can't
Right.
fire the school teachers.
No.
It's a contract. So that's another issue that we have to think about as we do what we have to do here.
It is, and it's just the question of how best to prudently manage these assets. And I know it's again a technical conversation, but again, having lived through cycles of the market and seeing, the losses that can occur, it really boils down to your risk appetite, your risk tolerance. And again, I go back to the analogy of the college savings account. If I'm fully funded in my college savings account, I'm de-risking the heck out of it. I got enough to pay his tuition. I'm not going to risk being in the stock market and losing 20% in a short period of time. Why would I do that? So instead of having 50,000, I have 40,000. I can do that. I'm just going to preserve what I have. So if that analogy makes sense to you, what I'm saying is we're kind of approaching that point where when we look at actual hard costs, we're getting close to being fully funded. So I know it's a hard decision, and I guess, I just don't know what more I can give you to help make this decision. I guess what I might propose is, if we want to bring in a fixed income manager to talk about what they would do with this portfolio so that you could hear from somebody who does this for a living every day of their life, right? Maybe that would give you more comfort. Fran and Mary, do you have questions, concerns? Because again, what I'm talking about is de-risking. So that should be less fearful than if I were to say, oh no, we gotta be 100% in stocks. So I'm going to the conservative side here, but you look concerned, so I just want to ask,
Mary
do you have
Lamont,
concerns?
I'm very conservative also. And as you're talking, I think of my little nest egg of money.
Right.
And, hopefully I have another few years left of my life to spend. And I think I don't want to want to risk it. And I agree with you on that point, is I don't think we should risk these people that are still working their money.
Right.
So there's where I am on that. I'm agreeing with.
At least in
the less-
concept, you,
In concept of,
yeah,
of not so much risk.
yeah.
There's my 2 cents.
Okay. Thank you.
Not 2 million, 2 cents.
Jeff Kirst, the 2006 or 2005 cutoff, it's for people who are not working anymore
For the district.
for the district. They may
Right.
be working someplace else, but
Right.
they're not necessarily employed. So we just want to make sure their lives continue with the health insurance, and the actuary has figured out medical care guesses as to what it's going to
Yeah.
go up,
Yeah.
because it's not going to get less, I don't think, as far as the payment for the care. That's going to continue to be an issue for people.
Yeah, it is, and there are assumptions the actuary makes for medical inflation in here. So they've done that, because
Yes.
they're actuaries. They love doing that.
Well, maybe Chairman Jeff Kirst, maybe Chairman could find somebody who is knowledgeable about fixed income.
So-
to visit with us sometime.
We can absolutely do that. We have an outside asset manager, and again, the district funds are by law contained to 100% fixed income. And so we have them on board, we meet with them monthly, right? I can ask them to kind of take a look at the portfolio and talk about what this portfolio might look like, because it's going to look different than the district portfolio. But at least you can talk to a real fixed income manager, and we pay them well. So they would be happy to do that for free. It wouldn't cost us anything. If that would maybe crystallize things for you, we could do that.
Mary Lamont, I have one more question. If we decide to go conservative, are we set forever? Or
No, no.
if
No, you would all-
something happens, we can meet again and change our minds? Or
Absolutely. You as the trustees would always have the ability to reset asset allocation, appoint a new manager, go all the way back into RBIF. That is absolutely yours and your prerogative only. So no, you're not committing forevermore on an investment approach or asset allocation. And again, we can take some of our money in RBIF and go fixed income. We could take all of our money out of RBIF and go fixed income. I mean, that's a decision I think that would be made later, it sounds like. But you have the ability to kind of toggle back and forth if things do change.
Jeff Kirst, in our last meeting, you had a list of other OPEB entities. There were 7 or 8, I think. Would you know if those are also in a static loop like ours, where they don't add people to it, and what they are doing?
So, Martin and I both worked at Washoe County, and they're, I think, the largest single entity in RBIF, I believe. So they have a closed system. However, it's not the same closed system. So my wife has close to 20 years at Washoe County. When she reaches the 20-year point, she's going to retire. And she'll get her full premium covered by the county until she dies. She doesn't get a subsidy. Because she worked there 20 years, she'll get 100% of her health insurance paid till the end of time. So it's closed in the sense they had to have begun work 1999, I think it was. You had to start work in 1999, but you don't yet have to have retired. So they know who's eligible. So it's closed in that sense, but it's wide open in terms of costs, right? We're somewhat contained on the subsidy the district can offer. There's some caps there. Washoe County has no caps. So when I was at Washoe County and the budget manager, our OPEB contribution every year was $20 million. And their liability was some multiple of ours. So even though they've got way more in RBIV, they're actually less funded than we are because, again, they're paying the whole amount of health insurance. I don't get any. She does. So, I don't think, I'd have to check, but I don't think there's anyone probably as close to this situation as we are. That being said, at Washoe County, I sat on their OPEB committee and we started having these conversations of, let's look at our investment horizon, because RBIF, it's just a generic portfolio. It's like an infinite investment horizon. And you kind of do have to look at, how long do I actually need the money? But we never got very far on it, and I don't know that that work was ever continued. But they're much further away than we are. I'd have to research the other entities. Most other entities don't have nearly as much as we do. I forget what maybe it's Clark County or Clark County School District that is the other big dog. We're number 3, Washoe County's number 1, I don't know who number 2 is. But, I mean, I can reach out to them if that's a data point you'd like to see. I just don't think anyone's in this situation. Because most entities don't sock away OPEB money.
Sure. Most of them pay as they go.
Yeah, yeah. So, wrapping up, what I hear the interest of the committee to be is to invite our asset manager to come in and talk about how they might structure a portfolio and just so that you can learn more.
Great.
Kevin, do I need a motion for just a request like that for somebody to come in and do a presentation next meeting?
It's not agendized, you can't make a motion on the item, so,
Well, we talked about investment strategies.
yeah, it's not listed for action.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's for discussion, possible action. So I just, like, can we just do an informal kind of, hey, it would be great if an asset manager came in here, or?
On the online version, it's for presentation and discussion only. 2.05.
Yeah, I don't know why we continue to have this problem, because on the agenda, we wrote it's for discussion and possible action. I don't know why we continue to have this issue.
I know this right from online, from
Okay,
the program online.
okay. Well, I'm not gonna take a motion on it, but I hear what the committee's asking. So, okay. All right, that brings us to agenda item 3.01 for public comment on, right? General public comment. Do I have any general public comment? Thomas, you're awake, so that's good, yeah. Okay. All right, hearing no public comment, our next meeting is in May 23rd at 3:30, unless, for whatever reason, we want to kind of check on your schedules for that presentation. Otherwise, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know why, this is the second time you're looking at what's online.